Good day, it's Thursday, November the 4th. I'm Martin Gagel with Market Radius Research. Today we've got Jesse Ledger, CEO of Miravo Pharma, or Nuvo Pharma formerly. Miravo has a diversified portfolio of commercial products focused on pain, allergy, neurology, and dermatology. The company's strategy is to in-license and acquire complementary growth-oriented products for the Canadian and international markets. I've got Miravo on the call today for a few reasons. They've got a strategy of in-licensing and acquiring products, avoiding the high risks of drug development. They've got a history of successful global partnerships, and they've got a strong financial position with over $20 million of cash. But remember, this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Jesse, thanks for taking the time to meet with us today, and let's hear the story.
Great. Thanks, Martin. Glad to be here. And I'll get things going here. Well, thanks for the intro, Martin. And you know, I think you touched on an important point. A number of the viewers may remember Miravo as Nuvo Pharmaceuticals, and the Miravo healthcare that we are today looks very different from where we were even 3 or 4 years ago. And I'll go through all that change today. But essentially, we're a Canadian-focused healthcare company with global reach. We have a diversified portfolio of commercial products, both in the prescription and non-prescription side of things. So as of today, we've got a strong commercial platform that's managed by a very creative and diverse management team with a significant amount of experience in launching new products into the Canadian market. We still have a manufacturing facility. So if you're familiar with the Nuvo story, you would know that we have an FDA-approved manufacturing facility just outside of Montreal, where we produce topical and semi-solid products for a number of our customers around the world. We've also got an Irish operation, so a team that is based in Dublin, Ireland, that manages our international licensing business. So we've got a number of proprietary products that we own global rights for. We out-license those products to different pharma companies in different markets outside of Canada. They handle the commercialization, and we collect royalties and milestones. So those are the 3 business segments that we have today: the Canadian commercial business, our manufacturing business, and our international licensing and royalty streams. And that's all supported by in-house operations. We've got full regulatory affairs, scientific affairs, finance, legal, everything you need to operate a pharmaceutical company in this day and age. And so what I'll do in this presentation is give you a few more insights into the products that are driving revenues and growth in these various business segments.
And sorry, just on one clarification on that, is you don't actually have lab with your own scientists and beakers. You've got scientists who help with the regulatory process and all the bureaucratic stuff, but you're not actually doing your own drug development and coming up with your own molecules?
That's right. We don't do drug development as of today. So we do testing, stability testing, all the work that we need to do to manufacture products and maintain them, but we're not doing any drug development work.
All right.
Yeah. So just I'll paint a picture here. This slide really is showing the evolution of our business from when we were Nuvo Pharmaceuticals and really focused on manufacturing to where we are today. And so if you look on this chart here, 2017, 2018, that's when we were primarily a manufacturing focused business. 90% of our revenue was coming from one product, Pensate 2%, and it was a great business, marginally profitable, but it wasn't all that meaningful from a scale standpoint. 2019, we finished the acquisition of Airless Pharmaceuticals Canada Inc. And this is really where we acquired the commercial business. So this is where our sales force came from. This is where all of our commercialized products in Canada came from. And we also acquired some global intellectual property rights and product portfolios and royalty streams around the world. And so obviously, as you can see here, the blue columns being our revenue line and the green being the adjusted EBITDA, that transaction at the start of 2019 had a really transformative impact on our business. In 2020, one of the key products in that portfolio was a royalty stream on an osteoarthritis drug called Vimovo that's sold in the United States by Horizon Therapeutics. There was an unexpected launch of a generic version of that product in the first quarter of 2020, and so we're starting to lose some royalty stream from that. But 2019, we restructured the business in order to account for this. The patents were invalidated in 2019, so we had some advance notice in terms of this event happening. And so we restructured the business, made a more profitable and streamlined and efficient business. And so we've been able to absorb that lost revenue impact. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail when I talk about the segments. And of course, in 2021, we've made some investments because we're launching new products. We launched a new migraine treatment about a year ago. We launched a couple of line extensions for one of our injectable osteoarthritis treatments at the start of this year. And then we were also waiting this summer on the approval of a pediatric version of our antihistamine or allergy product called Blexton that came through. We got an approval from Health Canada. And so a number of investments have been made into preparing for those commercial launches. And again, I'll get into more details on those products in later slides. And one of the big areas, you touched on this before, Martin, we don't have in-house research and development. Our pipeline, our product pipeline is being built through business development activities. So in licensing, acquisitions of new product portfolios and businesses. And so we also made some major investments this year in enhancing our business development team so that we can look at more opportunities and build out the pipeline so that we've got a sustainable business into the future with new product launches happening every single year. So let's get into the segments. We'll start with the commercial segment. This is our biggest segment in the business. And in the second quarter, this was about 70% of our total revenue. And out of that, Cambia and Blexton are the two biggest products in the portfolio, roughly $9.2 million of top line revenue in the second quarter. So what are these products? These are the products that we put promotional resources behind. So we have 38 sales reps across the country that promote these products to various physicians. Subex and Cambia are both migraine treatments, and they both play a different role in the treatment of migraine. Cambia is more of a first-line treatment option. It's basically a diclofenac powder in a sachet, like a sugar packet, that you mix with water, you stir it up, and you drink it. And first-line treatment option for migraineurs works as fast as 15 minutes. So it's a very quick, very effective medication, which is why it's a first-line treatment option. We've been selling Cambia since, it's almost a decade now. And it's a great product that's carved out a real niche in the migraine space in Canada. Subex is a second-line treatment. So it takes an NSAID, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. In this case, it's naproxen, which is kind of a similar molecule to ibuprofen or Advil, and it combines it with a drug called sumatriptan, which is really a specialized migraine medicine. So you have the synergistic effect of the two molecules. There's a rapid release of sumatriptan and a delayed release of naproxen. So you're getting headache relief within 2 hours and sustained relief over a 24-hour period. So we've got first-line, second-line treatment options that neurologists and primary care physicians can use in the treatment of their migraine patients. Blexton is an allergy medication. It's indicated for allergic rhinitis as well as chronic spontaneous urticaria, which is the scientific word for hives. And so we promote this to allergists as well as dermatologists. And then, of course, primary care physicians prescribe a fair amount of antihistamines to their patients. We launched this back in 2016, so we're into our fifth year on the market. And I've got some data later on where I can show you how well this product is performing. But it's an exceptional product. It's got a strong safety profile, some improved efficacy in certain areas relative to our competitors. And this is the biggest product in our portfolio. And then Neovisc 1 and Plus are hyaluronic acid injectable products for osteoarthritis of the knee. And these were relaunched in January of this year.
So those products are only sold in Canada by yourselves. Other companies have license for them in different regions of the world. They sell it there. You sell these here in Canada. That's
right. And so like Subex is a product that we own. That's a proprietary product that we own globally. So it's sold in the United States as under the brand name Trexamed, and it was originally developed by GlaxoSmithKline. So it's got a really nice pedigree. There, 13 phase 3 studies, but so it's sold in the United States now by a company called Curax Healthcare, Curax Pharmaceuticals. We recently licensed this in Northern Europe back at the end of last year. We licensed it to Orion Pharmaceuticals in Finland. So they've got it for the Nordic countries as well as a number of other Baltic markets. And then we licensed it in the summertime to a Korean company called SK Chemicals. And so both Orion and SK are going through the registration pathway right now in their respective markets. But currently, these products, yes, are sold by us in Canada directly with our sales force.
All right.
Okay. And so there are other products in the commercial segment. We call these our legacy products. They're all cash flow generating products for the most part. Some of them have gone generic, so they have generic competition, or they're off patent, or they're just not in therapeutic areas that are focus areas for us. However, they still generate nice cash and contribute to the bottom line. We just don't put any promotional resources behind any of these other products.
Those, as one would say in business school, they're mature products, and you're just milking them. So
cash cows, yeah, nice to have, but there's limited opportunity for growth.
All right.
So then the second segment we have, this is our licensing and royalty segment. So really where we capture revenues generated from our international business for the most part. And so here, this is where we've licensed out intellectual property or different products that we own to companies around the world. And we're collecting royalty streams, we're collecting milestone payments. This is the segment where we capture those revenue streams. So very different from our Canadian commercial segment. This is third parties are selling the products. We're just collecting checks.
This is kind of the inverse of some of your Canadian business, where you get the license to sell it, you do the work, and then you pay a royalty off to the global license holder. For that one, you have the global license. And for these, you hold the global license or licenses in non-Canadian regions, and then you license them to other people who take it through the whole regulatory process and the distribution process.
Yep, that's exactly right. And they make the investments in the sales force and marketing, and we simply, in some cases, we supply the finished product to them. In other cases, there's a contract manufacturer that makes the product, and then we're just collecting a royalty on sales.
Do you guys typically, in both the Canadian and for this one, have one central manufacturer, be it that you control, that everyone just uses the same factory to produce it, or does maybe the North America have its own factory, and then the European or the Asian licensees manufacture it themselves or through a partner in their region?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag. In the case of Pensay 2%, we manufacture that for our partners, Horizon in the US, Gebro in Switzerland, and we're working on some other markets. Subex is manufactured by a contract manufacturing company in the United States. We manage that relationship, and then we supply it to our partners around the world, the finished products they buy through us. Results is a product that we can manufacture in our facility. We're not doing that yet. Right now, it's manufactured by a CMO in Europe for our European partners. And then we've got a CMO in Canada that's manufacturing the product for our domestic market. But we're in the process of tech transferring that. And then in the case of Vimovo, the manufacturing is handled by our licensees. So we're not even involved in that particular product. So it's a real mixed bag. But one of the things that we like to do, sort of moving forward, and certainly as we're focused on Pensay 2% and Subex, is entering into license agreements where we can capture these royalty payments and milestones, which get recognized in this segment, but then also supplying the finished product, which gets recognized in our manufacturing, production, and services segment. So we end up having two revenue streams from some of these products, which is really nice.
Yeah. And you only have your own salespeople and go through the regulatory environment in Canada. So that's where you get economies of scale. You're not trying to sell one drug in Germany or in the US, or is that right?
That's right. Yeah. And so just, on talking a little bit more about the licensing and royalty segment. So I touched on Vimovo earlier. This is the osteoarthritis drug that we sell in the United States through Horizon Therapeutics. And then in the rest of the world, it's sold by a German company called Grunenthal. And so in 2019, right after we had acquired this product, the patents in the United States were invalidated through in a bit of a surprising turn of events in the US courts. And what that did was that opened up the door for generic competition to enter the market. At that time, we restructured the business. found significant cost savings, found a more efficient way of operating our international business, and got ready for the entrance of that generic. The generic didn't enter until the first quarter of 2020. And so now, we're more than a year into the generic launch. The generic obviously has taken a fair amount of market share away from the brand business. We still get a royalty. It's just not the same level as what it was before. And so on this slide, you can kind of see the impact, the year-over-year change in the royalties. Year to date, 2020, we had made 3.6 million, and this year we made 800,000 or thereabouts in royalty revenue. So it's had an impact on us, but like I said, we restructured the business, and from a financial standpoint, we're very healthy. The rest of the business continues to grow the way that we were anticipating, and this patent issue had no impact on the international business. It's a whole different set of patents, and so at this point, it's kind of a non-event. But we do still reap the benefit of some of those milestones. So when you look at our business on a year-over-year basis, and you see declines on top-line revenue and EBITDA, a lot of it is driven by the loss of this particular royalty stream.
Was it like when there's a legal battle over a patent or whatever, that could happen with any drug, and maybe whatever, you just got unlucky on that, or were there lessons you learned from that you're applying to the rest of the business, and maybe how you structure it, or the due diligence you do on before you license a drug? Are there any, or you just learned from that you need more diversification in case another sort of black swan comes out that you got lots of legs on the chair?
No, it's a great question, and like we did a significant amount of due diligence on this asset, and we were aware that there were ongoing patent challenges. The position, or the ultimate outcome that the U.S. courts decided on really went against over 100 years of case law precedent in terms of the reasons why they invalidated the patents. And I won't get into all the specifics as to why that happened. It happened, and it was a very unexpected event, because I think if we had thought that there was any legitimate chance for that patent to be overturned, this business used to give us a guaranteed $7.5 million US annual royalty stream. So it was a very lucrative product for us. We were supposed to get that royalty until the end of May next year, and obviously that got cut short. So I guess I think the learning is, with intellectual property, the patents are patents. They can always be challenged. You never have any certainty with patents. They provide you can feel very comfortable about an IP portfolio, but you have to protect them, and the courts do weird things sometimes that are out of your control. And so I think that the big story is, yes, you need a diversified product portfolio. And fortunately, we're in a situation where we've got a very diverse product portfolio with a number of products that are generating strong growth and revenue. And this is part of the reason why we're looking to bring in more products through in-licensing and acquisitions, so that we can further diversify the product portfolio and really protect against other future revenue or potential revenue disruptions to some of our key products.
All right.
So the third segment that we have is our production and service segment. So this is really where we capture revenues that are generated from products that we either manufacture at our facility outside of Montreal, which is really Pensade 2% and Pensade, which you see on the chart here, as well as a component of the Cynera and Rapidan patch. But this is also where we capture revenues when we supply finished products that are manufactured by a third-party CMO, but we've licensed the product to a party in a different country. So in the case of, like I said earlier, Subex with Orion in Northern Europe and SK Chemicals in South Korea, we will supply them with finished product from our contract manufacturer, and we earn revenue and gross margin from the supply of those finished products. That revenue gets captured in this segment. The royalty streams get captured in the licensing and royalty segment. But
are there synergies? Like, do you overall make better margins if you're both manufacturing and sort of licensing the product, or is the manufacturing margins just super competitive? So like, it's good you've got production revenues, but or do you know what I mean by their synergies? Like you end up getting overall better margins as opposed to you were manufacturing someone else's drug?
Yeah, I think, oh, for sure. Because we're manufacturing and then licensing the product out to somebody else, we're getting a way better margin than you would get as a contract manufacturing business, for sure. That's for sure. And so, whether, and that's just a function of, because we don't have an extra party involved in the supply chain, right? So in the case of, if we had a CMO that was making a product for us and then we're supplying that to somebody else, yes, we make some money. It's incremental, but it's not as good as, on Penset and Penset 2%, where we supply that directly. And then if we're getting a royalty on top of that, it's a much better margin or much better contribution overall. The other thing it gives you is flexibility in terms of how you structure a deal. And so depending on the market that you're in, depending on pricing and market dynamics and sort of also the needs of your partner, you can shift value from the finished product supply to the royalty, or from the royalty to the finished product supply. Obviously for us, if we're able to earn revenue on the supply of finished product and have more of the revenue and more of the value tied to the supply of the finished product, we're effectively getting paid our royalty for the intellectual property before the partner is ever selling product in the market, which is great for us. Whereas if you're getting a royalty, you got to wait till the end of the quarter. They send you the net sales report. They say, this is how much we sold. Here's how much you get. And which is also great when the business is up and running, but it's always nice to get paid, upfront. So, yeah, provides lots of flexibility at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, those are the segments, and so I'll give a bit of an overview of our revenue situation. Obviously we're a commercial business, as I said, and so this slide gives you a sense of our top line, what we call adjusted total revenue, which the adjustment comes from. We've got certain of our royalty streams have to be considered as contract assets on our balance sheet because they've got guaranteed revenue or guaranteed royalties. So we don't get to recognize those because of accounting standards through traditional revenue. So we have adjusted total revenue to show people the real revenue number. And we've got reconciliations at the end of the slides that your viewers can take a look at. But basically, Q2, solid quarter. Our core business in the Canadian commercial business continued to grow year over year. The production and service business was up. The production and service business is generally a lumpy business just because we're waiting on it's the timing of when orders are placed from our customers, and they're not always placed at the same time every single year. So you can see, one quarter might be high, one quarter might be lower on a sequential and a year over year basis. But what you need to look at is how are things happening on a 12-month basis. And so the production and service business is doing well. And of course, licensing and royalty business, I talked about the impact of the lost Vimovo royalty in the United States. That's driving most of the decrease. The other thing, last year we recognized a $2.4 million milestone payment for the license of our intellectual property related to Yosprala with Takeda in Japan. So they launched the product in Japan last year, and we recognized a one-time milestone payment of $2.4 million. So that wasn't a repeated milestone, of course, this year. So those are the things that are kind of driving the year-over-year declines. But at the end of the day, the core promoted products are growing and moving in the right direction. And then from an adjusted EBITDA standpoint, you see the same kind of dynamic playing out. So I won't belabor this point, but healthy business from an EBITDA contribution standpoint.
I don't want to get too accounting-y here, but I've just got on my second screen here, your quarterly results, and your earnings are pretty volatile with some adjustments and so forth. And that's just like anyway, is that just sort of quirks of your business, or when you sign licenses and that?
So, there are kind of two things that are driving. If you look at our net income, right, the sort of the traditional metric of profitability and earnings per share, our net income is driven down in a very negative way by amortization, the depreciation and amortization. So our intellectual property portfolio gets, obviously amortized over a long period of time. So that's a big chunk. That's non-cash. And the other big chunk is the fair value of the equity component of our loan facility with Deerfield. So in order to acquire the Airless business at the end of 2018, we entered into a loan agreement with Deerfield that had two different tranches. There's an amortization loan and a convertible loan. Obviously, the convertible loan can be converted into shares. The amortization loan had warrants that were attached to it that function in a similar way as a convertible loan, whereas those warrants are exercised, the cash value can be applied towards debt repayment. And so every quarter, we have to value those equity instruments. And so when our share price goes up or down, that has negative and positive consequences on our non-cash consequences that flow through our income statement as a fair value adjustment. And then we also have to account for the interest that we pay as an accounting, in accordance with IFRS, in accordance with accounting standards, which means we pay cash interest of 3.5% every quarter, but in our financial statements, it's reflected as 10.5%, because that's how the accountants value our debt from a fair value standpoint. So again, there are all these non-cash things that pile up, and that's what's causing that discrepancy, which is why we try to focus on revenue, adjusted EBITDA, and kind of focus on what's going on in the cash flow statement. What's the cash from operations? How's that flowing out? And all of that is positive. So
yeah. And your adjusted EBITDA is a pretty good proxy to cash flow?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And personally, a lot of the accounting stuff they've done in the last 20 years, just you look at the earnings and it has no relation to the business. It's a head scratcher for me. I don't know what they're trying to prove.
It is. Yeah. It's supposed to smooth things out, but certainly in our case, it complicates things for sure. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, speaking of debt, the slide sort of gives you a sense of our debt. So actually, there were three tranches of debt that we took on to acquire the Airless business. There was an initial bridge loan to help with initial working capital that was paid off in the first year, and then the amortization loan, which is your traditional term loan, that the term expires at the end of 2024. We've got a 3.5% coupon, and we pay $2.5 million US every quarter against that loan. So this was as of the end of Q2. Subsequent to Q2, obviously we made another payment, so we're down to about 38 million and change on and that's in US dollars. And then the convertible loan is not prepayable, has the same term, December 31st, 2024, and it can convert at US 270 per share, or at the end of 2024 we'd be looking to refinance that if the shares aren't in the money at that point. So the amortization loan will be paid off in full before the end of the term, and then obviously we're left with the convertible note.
All right, and you referred to this as your Deerfield,
yes.
And I think Deerfield is a very sophisticated biotech kind of funding group
yes.
out of the U.S., correct?
That's right. They're strictly focused on healthcare, whether it's pharma, biotech, generics, medical devices, early stage, late stage. All they focus on is healthcare.
Yeah. All right.
So the next slide here just covers off our cash and capital structure. So here you can see our fully diluted share count. So 11.4 million common shares issued and outstanding. When this deck was prepared, it was $1.39. I think we closed yesterday at $1.60, something along those lines. The stock options outstanding, and then you see the breakdown here on the convertible loan and the warrants. So those are the additional equity instruments that are held by Deerfield, and so they're obviously underwater. The convertible loan converts at 270 US per share. The warrants can be exercised at 353 Canadian per warrant, and it's important that everybody understands Deerfield, even though they hold all of these equity instruments, they can only hold up to 4.95% of the issued and outstanding shares of Miravo at any one point in time. So there's not a scenario where these warrants or the convertible notes come into the money and Deerfield flips a switch, dilutes everybody in a massive way, because they can only hold, basically 5% of our common shares at any one point in time. So there needs to be a systematic and sort of logical way for them to monetize their position in order to ensure value remains with the existing shareholders. So it's a nice sort of protective element to this structure.
And hopefully they're a very sophisticated group, that they wouldn't be like some yokel investor just sort of, I got 5 million shares to sell, let's hit the bid and walk away.
Well, you know what? Like, they're earning a 3.5% interest on our debt, and we know that sophisticated private equity investors are not looking for 3.5% returns on their capital deployment. And so obviously they're expecting to get more value out of the equity component of this transaction. So you're absolutely right. They're sophisticated. They're not just going to dump shares and walk away, because that would impair the value that's returning to them as well. So there's very much alignment in the way that they're looking at this business, and how our shareholders and potential shareholders would be looking at the business as well.
All right. Okay.
And so then below, you can just see a scenario, sort of the market cap, 52-week high and low. Our cash position as of the end of Q2 was just about 28 million, or just over 27 million, and of course the enterprise value calculation.
All right.
So, that's the business in a nutshell. Now, where are we going? How are we going to grow? What's going to happen? And I've already talked about business development being a real focus for us. And so, the idea is bring in more products. Let's bring in more products. We've got an established infrastructure in Canada. We've got an established infrastructure in Ireland that can support international business. And so that's the game plan. We've made significant investments by hiring new people to come in. We've got an entire business development team that is looking for opportunities. And really what we're trying to do is be in a position that every year for the foreseeable future, we're launching 1 to 2 new products and creating a pipeline that supports that. And so, the expectation is that we get some deals done before the end of this year. We're on, fingers crossed. It's always hard to pinpoint timelines on BD transactions, but we're aggressively looking at some interesting in-licensing opportunities that would allow us to be in a position so that, come 2023 and beyond, we're launching new products every year. Next year, of course, we'll be launching the pediatric form of Blexton, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And how are we doing that? We've got a team that knows how to get deals done. That's my background. All I've done my entire career is business development. I was involved in the management team at Tribute Pharmaceuticals before I joined Nuvo. And some of the listeners may know Tribute. You might even remember Tribute, Martin, as sort of a spec pharma company in Canada that got started around 2010, 2011. And I was part of the management team that built that up through acquisitions and in licensing, and we ultimately sold it to Posen Inc. in the United States in 2015. And this was the transaction that actually created Airles Pharmaceuticals. And so out of that experience, Airles ultimately filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy because of their US activities. And so I was able to go back and buy the Canadian portion of the business. So part of the business that Bernie, our Chief Scientific Officer, Luigi Berardelli, our VP of Sales and Marketing, we're also involved in that business. And so there's a significant amount of experience around the table, whether it's, myself, Bernie, Luigi, Mary Jane and Tina have significant transactional experience as well, both with Nuvo / Miravo and previous roles. So this is a team that knows how to get deals done. We know how to find products. We know how to close on transactions. We know how to integrate products, and then we know how to launch products. And we've demonstrated that with the current portfolio. The other thing that's important about being focused on business development is knowing how to work with partners. And so we work both on the licensee side as well as on the licensor side. And if you look at this slide here, it really highlights some of the companies that we're in partnerships with. And you see large multinationals like AbbVie, Novartis, Takeda, as well as smaller regional companies like Curax, like Assertio, Feist Pharma, Recordati. And so we understand the needs of a licensor and the responsibilities of a licensee. Partnerships are important to our business. That's our lifeblood. And so you don't get a roster of partners like this if you don't know how to manage those relationships. And so we're pretty proud of the partners that we work with, whether they're multinationals or local companies. And not every company, certainly in Canada and even in the United States and abroad, could boast of a roster of partners like this. So we're pretty proud of that. And so then looking more specifically at some of the things, how we're developing our pipeline within the commercial business. I mentioned before the pediatric version of our Blexton antihistamine product was approved by Health Canada in August. And so what this approval does is it expands our label. So now patients as young as 4 years old can be prescribed Blexton. What it also includes are 2 new formats. So right now we sell Blexton as a 20 milligram tablet. The new approval brings an oral solution onto the market and a 10 milligram quick melt tablet. So 2 formats that are ideal for children. And so the label's been updated now. We're doing pre-launch activities to get ready for the new year, Q1, when we'll be launching these new formats, the solution and the quick melt tablet. So we're very excited. This really expands the label and really makes it so that physicians and healthcare providers, they've got one choice now for antihistamines for allergy patients, whether they're children or adults, and they've got multiple different formats to choose from depending on the needs of the individual patient. So we're really excited about this one. The other recent launch I mentioned before, Subex, we launched it in September, so we've been on the market just over a year now. This data obviously is a little bit old because of the Q2 element, but we're making really good progress. Over 7,000 prescriptions have been written in the first 10 months of launch. We're approaching 1% market share in a very fragmented migraine market, and the migraine market in Canada is about $140 million a year in sales. So we're making inroads there. We're seeing that prescriptions are coming from healthcare providers switching patients from existing triptan therapies to Subex, which also includes a triptan, as I mentioned before, but has the benefit of the added NSAID, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. So, solid growth prospects, solid results so far. And of course, we launched this during COVID. So this was a virtual launch, which nobody in our company had ever done. I don't think anybody had done virtual product launches. And so it was an interesting experience, but we're getting really nice traction so far. And then, of course, the other product launch we had this year was Neovisc 1 and Plus. And so, again, we were selling a previous version of Neovisc for the past decade or so. We ran into some supply chain issues, and so we found a new source of supply. We were able to reintroduce the product this year. And so we've got 2 formats, a single dose, which is the Neovisc 1, or a triple dose product which is Neovisc Plus. And again, depending on the needs of the patient, they could choose a single dose or a triple dose. And, we've already got most of the private insurers in Canada are covering this, and we're clawing back and getting our market share back on this particular business. So, again, making nice inroads despite the complications that COVID posed, and patients not being able to go see their physicians in person. This is a drug that's administered by the doctor in their doctor's office, where they actually inject it right in the person's knee. So as markets are opening and patients are going back to their doctors, the growth prospects for products like this just get better. All right. And so specifically on Blexton, this is a chart that shows prescription data. So TRX is total prescriptions as measured by IQVIA, which is a third party that tracks this information. And as you can see, since launch, Blexton has just grown. It's always kind of lumpy because you've got allergy season in sort of the second quarter and third quarter of the year. So you do get some lumpiness in terms of how that goes. But on the right side, you sort of see the sequential year-to-date numbers, and you can see consistent growth since launch. Normally getting up to 18, 19, 20% market share, you'd be pretty happy. I know we've got more to go. Where we're getting our market share is from a drug called Cetirizine, which in Canada is known as Reactin. In the United States, it's called Zyrtec. is a product that's been on the market for ages. When we launched Blexton, Cetirizine had almost 70% market share in Canada. It's down to 53%. We're taking that market share away from them because we've got a product that has a better safety profile and it's got better efficacy data when it comes to urticaria or hives. From in the allergic rhinitis area or allergy area, all of the antihistamines are pretty comparable from an efficacy standpoint, but where they differ is in the safety profile, where we're superior, and of course in hives, where we've got better data in head-to-head studies. So we think that we'll ultimately become the number one prescribed antihistamine in Canada within the foreseeable future.
And how long of life do you have in that, your license or the patents on that?
So we have a market exclusivity from Health Canada until the end of 2024. And so, yeah, so the game plan, of course, is to eclipse Cetirizine's market share before then. And then, of course, the market becomes available to generics. We are looking at options on how we can preserve as much of that business as possible. And so we've got some time to work through that. And but obviously, this is one of the reasons why we're so focused on business development. This is a great product. It's the biggest product in our portfolio, but we know after 2024, it's going to be at risk of generic competition. So we need to have other products in the bag that can bridge the gap and then create that growth potential beyond 2024.
Is building the brand recognition really important in this over the next couple years, so that when it becomes genericized, that people still sort of associate your name with it, and their reaction is to just to pick up that drug and not the generic?
That's exactly it. You know, if we can create that brand equity and then create a structure and access to the medicine so that patients who want the brand can continue to get the brand despite there being a generic available, that's an ideal scenario. And so that's the kind of thing that we're working on. And you know, if you think about the advent of telehealth and digital health, which has really come to the forefront over the COVID pandemic, you know, there's some interesting opportunities out there to be able to leverage those kinds of platforms to support lifecycle management for products like Blexton. So,
is there a general playbook when you get generic competition, where you drop the price and just try to keep volumes up at a lower price, or keep the high price and the higher margins and then just live with sort of more deteriorating like market share? Or is there a general rule of play, or just the analysis of each product kind of comes with their unique quirks to have a unique strategy?
Yeah, no, traditionally, you know, the playbook would be keep the price as high as possible and just squeeze out as much margin as you can as you lose the market share. And alternatively, some companies would do what's called like an ultra generic or an authorized generic, so where they would license the product, cross-license the product to a generic company who would sell, you know, it'd be another generic on the market, but at least it'd be generic product that you're supplying and getting the benefit of. And those work to some extent, but you continue to lose significant market share. And so what we're looking to do is to try to do something better than that. We know we're never going to be able to keep 100% or even 75% or of the market share. But you know, typically generics within a couple of years of launch will you know, get 95% of the market. We've had some successes in our portfolio with both Basilip and Ceriatane that are in that legacy mature products basket that went generic a couple of years ago, and we continue to maintain 15-20% market share with those products because of some of the tactics that we use. And so if we can do better than that, that has a huge impact on earnings, because when you get to the point where you lose exclusivity, you're not putting we don't have sales force expense tied to these products anymore, right? That gets moved to something else, and so then every dollar that you're earning from that, the gross margin of the products hits the bottom line for the most part. So the profit margin increases when you lose exclusivity. It's just how much of that market can you maintain, and you know, if you can do better than past history, that can have a meaningful impact on the business.
All right, thanks.
And so then just Cambia, like I mentioned before, it's been on the market for quite a while, just sort of a steady Eddie performer, year after year. We always look at things on an annualized basis just because there is seasonality as well with the migraine business. But it's up 5% market share for total prescriptions, which is, again, this is a very fragmented market. You have a lot of generic competition in the migraine market. So to have 5% market share where you've got, there are six different triptan products with brands and generics on the market. So you've got, 12 different sort of direct competitors, as well as Cambia and then now Subex carving out a niche. And so we're very happy with the performance of Cambia over the years. And then, of course, the pipeline opportunities in our international business. I've touched on a couple of these already. The partnerships we signed with SK Chemicals and Orion for Subex. Those products, they're both going through regulatory review process, and we're anticipating approval decisions sort of later next year on both of these. And so the possibility that we'd be seeing commercial launches in early 2023. There are a number of milestones that are tied to this, so we could see additional revenue for both of these opportunities next year once we see some approvals. And then, of course, once we start supplying finished product, we will be earning revenue on that and margin, and then the ultimate once we start getting royalties. The other two products here, Results is our proprietary head lice product that we also own global rights for. We did a deal with Mentholatum, which is a US-based company, earlier in the year. They just launched last month, and so Results is now available in the US market. This was kind of the last major market that we were missing, and so we earn revenue on the supply of finished product with to Mentholatum. So if you go on Amazon.com, you can order the trade name for the product with Mentholatum is Mentholatum Kids Head Lice Kit. So they've got a Mentholatum brand, which is kind of like a Vicks Vapor Rub, sort of home remedy type brand that they've got Results under that umbrella brand. So we're leveraging that, and so that's now available. And then, of course, Gebra Pharma is our partner in Switzerland for Pennsaid 2%. They launched in January of this year, and so of course, uptake has been slower than anticipated because of COVID, but with the world reopening again, things can only get better from here. And so that's the business. Just summing up here, we're a diversified pharmaceutical business. We've got over 20 revenue generating products, and obviously we're looking for more. We've got partners all around the world that are selling our products in our domestic business. But the growth drivers really are continued growth of our key promoted products. So more and more prescriptions, more market share expansion, and then of course looking at recent and upcoming product launches that will drive incremental growth and new business development activity, which we've talked about to build that sustainable pipeline that we're looking for. All of our products, or our key products at least, are protected by market exclusivity or patents, and where we've partnered with companies, they're generally long-term partnerships. It's expensive and time-consuming to find new partners, so you want to make sure that you get it, you hook up with the right company, and so that's important to us. We continue to release strong quarterly earnings, both from a revenue and EBITDA contribution standpoint. We've got a solid cash position, as you talked about earlier in the presentation, and we're continuing to generate strong cash flows every quarter. And yes, we do have debt, but it's got a very low fixed 3.5% interest rate and a very, very clear path to repayment. So all in all, I think we're very well positioned to really take this platform and take it to the next level. And we're going to do that through new product acquisitions and in-licenses and continued growth. So,
is there a focus on in-licensing to go into your Canadian distribution channel, or is there a more of a focus to sort of get the global rights to something and then out-license that, or is one of those businesses better, or do you just like to have a portfolio of a bit of everything as it just they add to each other?
Well, I think right now the main focus is finding products for Canada. Okay. And primarily because we know we've got a bit of a a patent or exclusivity cliff coming up at the end of 2024. So we want to make sure that we can fill that gap. And we know that we'll be able to do that. We've demonstrated that in the past, and so we'll get those new products in that are complementary to where we're focused on right now. The international business, there's still a number of markets left that we need to partner our products. So there's additional incremental growth opportunity there. You know, we've got the Middle East, more of Southeast Asia, certain European geographies that we're not in yet, and we really haven't touched on Latin America at this point. So there are a number of market opportunities internationally, which are being managed. And so the focus is really on in-licensing new innovative products for the Canadian market. And of course, we're always looking, you know, we've looked at a number of acquisition opportunities. It's not to say that we're not looking at global opportunities, but there are far more sort of Canadian in-licensing opportunities under evaluation.
Gotcha. And when you in-license into Canada, what does a deal typically look like? Do you have to pay an upfront check and they obviously get some kind of royalties off of it? And then do you still have to do like trials and studies here to get approval from Health Canada, or do you take their portfolio of data and kind of package it for the Canadian regulators and then hand it off to them? What does it take to launch when you in-license something from someone? What does it take to launch it in Canada?
Sure. So I'll start with the deal structure. Yeah, you're right. Usually there's some kind of an upfront payment, and maybe a series of milestone payments. You know, maybe something on approval, some sales-based milestones that's hitting certain thresholds, and then a royalty on net sales. And so that's the typical licensing structure. And, you know, in-licensing is generally far less costly than acquiring assets. And if you look at Blexton, for example, when we licensed Blexton when I was at Tribute, that involved a 375,000 euro upfront payment. And this is a product that, you know, is doing, you know, significant sales in Canada, and to pay 375,000 euros up front is a small investment. Of course, we had to get the, you know, sort of going to your second question. Yes, we have to prepare the dossier for submission to Health Canada. We have to have those discussions. We have to get the drug approved. We have to establish the pricing, negotiate pricing with private insurance companies so that they'll pay for it, and then go out and launch the product and you know, communicate that to physicians and healthcare providers so that they start writing prescriptions for our products. So, you know, licensing a product, the upfront investment or the upfront cost is low, and then you amortize all of those various expenses over a longer period of time, as opposed to going out and acquiring an on-market product where, you know, typically you're paying a multiple of EBITDA, and then that multiple depends on, you know, how much protection does that product have. And so even something that's got, you know, $5-10 million of EBITDA, you know, that could be you know, $25-50 million transaction, you know, which is a lot of money depending on the product, right? It's just an example. So I think from our standpoint, given that we've got cash on the balance sheet, we do have debts. We're not looking to go out and raise additional debt at this point. You know, the best way for us to sort of find new products is through in-licensing transactions, because the cost is lower and we can spread those costs over a much longer period of time.
And when you're trying to in-license something, I guess there's several other similar companies as yourself here in Canada that do that sort of a thing, but it's not like a bidding, like, well, we'll give you $500,000 and a higher royalty, because they need to also look at how well you execute. Because if you give them a 50% royalty, but you're a bunch of bumpkins and you can't get the product launched, little good that does them. So I guess your history and track record and the plan, I would presume you put together a business plan, and this is how we're going to launch it, and this is why you should trust us with your IP. That's all part of the negotiations?
Absolutely. And that's, you know, when I showed those slides earlier that show the market share progression, those are the kinds of stories that these licensors and partners love to see, right? They love to hear, oh, you've got 38 sales reps across the country, and you got Blexton approved, you got Cambia approved, you got Subex approved, and you've grown them from zero to millions of dollars in sales with and some of the sales force that we have been with us since we launched Cambia back in 2011. So there are long established relationships with those physicians and healthcare providers in those territories. And so we just keep on adding on. And so that track record is really powerful when it comes to negotiations. And then the other part of it is, yes, there are other companies, in our peer group that have a similar approach to growing their portfolios. For the most part, we're all playing in slightly different therapeutic areas. There are some overlaps, for sure there are overlaps, but most of the spec pharma companies in Canada are playing in different therapeutic areas. So we don't run into each other looking for the same assets all the time. But if we do, then yes, it comes down to the track record. What have we done in the past? What is the team capable of? How have we dealt with the challenges that come with Health Canada negotiations and pricing and reimbursement negotiations, and all of those things are extremely important. And there, I think we've got a pretty good story to tell.
All right. And you mentioned that even, I guess, by year end, you're hoping, or you could announce some deals. What kind of, over the next 6 to 9 months or so, what kind of news flow or catalyst should investors be looking for? Sounds like some deals, some in-licensing stuff. Anything else to sort of put on your watch list of?
Yeah. I think certainly, obviously getting some in-licensing transactions done. And again, the goal is to get them done by the end of the year. Timing is always challenging, but that's certainly something to be on the lookout for, as well as out-licensing transactions. We've got a number of out-licensing conversations underway. Those would be the two big things that we'd be focusing on between now and the end of the year. Aside from, we've got our Q3 results will be released on the 15th of November before markets open. So that's a Monday. And so, obviously, continued quarterly earnings, but really, I think the major news flow from us would be business development related between now and sort of the next 6 to 9 months.
All right. Well, on that, we should wrap it up here. Any final comments, Jesse? And thank you for making the time to chat. No, this is it. I likewise, thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate the questions. You put some thought into them, and that's nice. And hopefully this is valuable for you and for your listeners. And thanks again. Appreciate it. All right, that's great. Have a great day, Jesse. Maybe in 6 to 9 months or in a few months, we'll get a bit of an update on some big transactions going on.
Perfect. All right.
Cheers.
Thanks, Martin.